Hello, everybody. Welcome to Art Tells a Story. Let it tell yours. My name is Matt Swift. I'm a local filmmaker, educator, curator, and mostly I'm here representing one of the things I do, which is I'm the co-founder of the Columbus Moving Image Art Review, the longest running Central Ohio showcase of locally free to submit and free to attend screenings of films, documentaries, animations, etc. We do it 4 times a year. The next call for submissions is actually coming up very soon, and we'll have a show in October. So we'll talk more about that later. Today, I want to give a shout out to the Reese brothers, Michael and Jim, for putting on this show. We've had a great series of shows so far with, the Ohio Art Council, the Greater Columbus Arts Council, Wild Goose Creative, Hammond, Harkins, you name it. No Sheep. Oh my gosh, there's so many organizations have participated in this show so far, and I'm just happy that I have a chance to come on and be able to talk with some film artists and today. So we also want to thank Nicolettecinemagraphics and Nikki Swift. She's the one behind the scenes making this whole show happen for us. Today I'll be talking with C.G. Ryan, is a Columbus video performance and new media artist who has been participating for many years now in the Columbus Moving Image Art Review. And one of the biggest things is she's just finished her MFA from the Columbus College of Art and Design with her new thesis project, Intangible Windows. Hey, CG, how you doing?
Hi, Matt. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So I just started out, like, we've known each other for a few years now, and I want to start out with a good question here. Is I have a really bad memory. Most people don't know, like, 4 years ago, I had a bad scooter accident with a traumatic brain injury. And so my short term's a little fuzzy, especially over the last 3 or 4 years. And so did you submit to Columbus Moving Image Art Review first, or did we go to Alliance, Ohio together for that film festival run by Crystal Showforth?
Well,
I have first?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It was actually through the Columbus Moving Image Art Review. I had just started doing video art. I think I actually hadn't started CCAD's master's program yet. And I was so excited to be able to find a venue for what was, for me at that time, a new art form, which was making my collages move. And I was really excited about, I'd heard about it on Facebook actually, and entered and was really thrilled to be accepted. And I remember meeting you and Nikki, and we really hit it off. And then I'm not exactly sure who told who about the film festival that we entered up in Alliance. And probably one of the wonderful things about that film festival is I got to travel for 2.5 hours both ways with you and Nikki. And you really get to know someone when you're running late to a film festival. And then on the way back, you're, going on all these country roads and stuff like that. And it was just a great opportunity to get to know both of you. So
yeah, the cogs are now clicking into place. I remember this. There was a film festival, and I think we both kind of had found it at the same time, and we're like sharing it with each other or something on Facebook.
Yes.
And we would all submitted things, and then you were like, hey, this is a long drive, and we just started a conversation about maybe we should go together, right? And then to save on the gas money and just have a chance to talk. Well, okay, cool, yeah, all right, let's make that happen. So, and it was right before. It was while you were still talking about trying to apply to CCAD, and you thought you were going. I think you had applied, and so we had a lot of conversation around that. So that's great. I could have looked that up, but I couldn't remember.
Way more fun talking about it, and it was actually a really interesting time because I had done my first augmented reality exhibit at Blockfort. And that was right after that. And I was invited by Natalie Sanchez to be in that show. And it was really great trying, experimenting with a new medium, and then, working with, projection, and just starting with performance. It was really awesome to meet the two of you and just talk about all the different ways to show moving image art. So.
Yep, I remember because you had talked about the show, and we knew the show because we know the people at Blockford as well, and we went and we saw the show. It was using a lot of HP Reveal stuff at that time. We can talk about tech stuff here in a little bit. So
okay.
It's really cool that show happened. Blockford is a great place. They're one of the few venues in Columbus that lets you do that kind of stuff. The Vanderelli Room. AJ will let you do some stuff over there too. It can be difficult to find what we call like white box spaces, galleries that will let you kind of take over their space and install a bunch of stuff and put a bunch of stuff into walls and all that. So, it's great that they're able to let you do that. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit. So okay. You have a long career of doing creative things. But so what, can you give us a little background? How did you get started, being an artist? Like, how did this all come about for you?
Well, it was actually funny. I thank you for sending me the questions in advance, because it really helped me think. And being asked about how did you become an artist, it's kind of like one of those questions where the answer will be different depending on, where you are, in your creative life. For me, it's funny. I've actually sometimes been challenged by the term artist because it has so much cultural baggage with it. And I actually prefer the term creator because I think that's a little bit more expansive and open. So I've been really interested in, trying to capture reality and in different types of forms, with drawings, with photography, pretty much, photography, pretty much I lived in the darkroom in high school. It was a great way to handle high school years, being in the darkroom and creating. And I loved the fact with photography that you could capture a bit of reality that seemed objective, but it was really subjective because you were choosing the frame. And from there, I grew up in a fairly underprivileged family in Los Angeles, and we lived in an affluent area, but we ourselves didn't have a lot. And so I was raised with having a great deal of significance placed on earning a living. And so I was really challenged with, I love doing art. I got a lot of positive input for it, but I was really afraid to commit to the fine arts. So I ended up going to school and getting a degree in design, which I absolutely loved. And that's actually what brought me to Ohio from Los Angeles. I graduated from the Art Center College of Design, Pasadena, and got hired by a firm out here in Columbus. And then after some years, it was almost like I felt like I'd been walking through a desert for years, and I didn't realize what the toll was having on me with not being able to create my own projects and to really try to embody my sort of inner visions in an external way. So I started doing art again, and just was trying to figure out what exact art form was really going to be what matched most what I wanted to communicate. And I've realized for a long time, I've been very, very interested in inner worlds and how people create their own realities and how different people have different world views. And I've really been interested in trying to visualize thought. And so I started out doing mixed media collage painting. And I loved it because when I really thought about it, having little fragments and pieces of reality and then moving it into an abstraction of paint and texture, it really most closely captured what I thought was how I put together pictures of the world, which is by creating collage in my head. And And I loved also sharing that artwork with people, because what I really wanted people to see is that their own worlds were also subjective, and, and also to have them maybe really even question how they put together their own vision of the world. And I ended up doing that work for a number of years, about 6 or 7 years. And I had my first retrospective, and I was surrounded by all this years of collage, mixed media painting. And all of a sudden, I was struck with this horrible realization that my work needed to move, that I was trying to visualize thought in a static medium. And what I really needed was I needed motion, I needed time, and I needed layering. And what was really frightening to me at that time is I had never done video work before, never done motion graphics. And I realized that I was going to have to be a beginner again. And so I started taking night classes at the Columbus College of, not Columbus College of Art and Design, but actually Columbus State. And their program was wonderful. I took night classes and went from being a straight beginner and gradually becoming more proficient. And then took a workshop with John Carnes at CCAD in projection mapping. And that really opened my eyes that, because I didn't really know what I was going to do with this, this component of movement and time. But the whole idea of projection mapping, where you could take this image and then superimpose it on a surface in the real world. I love the idea that we're breaking down the barriers, again, between trying to visualize thought, putting it in the real world, and then actually literally knocking down surfaces. And really kind of to communicate to people that, there is more to the world than what we see. So that became really exciting to me. I started exhibiting moving image art, and then started playing with the idea of going back to school to CCAD. Actually, I applied to 6 different schools. And since I'm from Los Angeles, part of me had always had this thought that I was going to move back. And so I kind of left it up to fate. I applied to 3 schools in California, 2 in Ohio, and 1 in Pittsburgh. And so I got accepted at 2, and the one that really felt right was CCAD, because what I loved about it was you could create the program to be exactly what you needed it to be. And so I just graduated in May, and we had a fabulous virtual graduation. CCAD did a great job with, kind of helping to, create lemonade out of very much, the lemon, circumstance of the pandemic. So anyway, so I graduated in May, and have been continuing to evolve and make new work.
I mean, that's a great story. There's a lot there to unpack. And I think the overall message and theme, though, is one that I care very much about. And it's something that I've had to do myself is kind of you being a creative. I use the term artist, but I'm very much one of those, like in the film world, like film versus video versus blah, blah, blah. Like, if it moves, it moves. If it moves you, it moves you. I mean, that's what should matter. And if you are a creative person, if you have that drive to be creative, like you find your life always trying to push you in that direction one way or another. And you constantly have to ask yourself questions. I mean, most people don't see, like, I grew up actually as a musician. I was a soprano soloist until I was 15 years old.
Wow.
Listen to my voice now, you would not think that I was like the lead soprano soloist on the end of the choir in like the first year of high school kind of thing. And that, that kind of, changed a lot, because now my voice is much deeper. And I learned to play several instruments. And at one point in my college years, I had a work-related injury with my hands, and I just realized that with the damage to the tendons in my arms, art was a problem. I was in the fine arts program, and I had to choose: am I a musician, or am I creating? Am I an artist in these more visual mediums? And I decided that I want to I will always sing. I will always do music. I will always write poetry, which is something I do. I will always find ways to bring those back easily because they're just inherently part of me for the majority of my life. The art is something I have to work at, that like I have to try to make art. And so I chose art. I want to create things. And if music and writing and stuff end up being a part of it, great. But like, you make that choice. And I've had to do this several times now for various other reasons. So I completely understand, like, you have to make these choices. You have to ask these questions. Like, suddenly you decided your art needed to move. What do I got to do that? You answer the questions for yourself and figure out, do I need training? Do I need classes? Do I need to find a mentor? What needs to happen? And that's part of growing as a creative. Anybody out there that's watching, you know, if you're looking for, you know, some insight, you know, from some people who've been trying to do this for a little while, sometimes you don't have the answers. Sometimes you have the question. And sometimes you don't even have the question. Sometimes you have the kernel of what you think the question might be, and then you ask the question, and the person's like, I think you're actually asking this. And here's the answer. So, like, you know, it's definitely a journey that you go on to be a creative. I think, and your story really illustrates that well. So within all of that, what you know, the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about is, you know, with the kind of work that you make, what inspires you? Like, what other artists, what other kinds of works do you look at? You know, where do you bring your inspiration from?
That's a good question. You know, the artists that have influenced me over time have changed, you know, depending on how, you know, my focus, my medium has changed. I remember when I was first doing mixed media collage painting, I saw an exhibit where Mark Bradford had this amazing exhibit. He was one of 3 artists at the Wexner Center. And I remember it was so validating, actually. When I saw his work, it actually felt familiar to me, because what he had done is he had grabbed, you know, snippets of the real world, and he created these universes that were, you know, massive scale, you know, so that it really did play with the idea of being small and large. And I was really impressed by his work. And then about a year later, Pippilotti Reese had an installation at the Wexner Center, and it was called The Tender Room. And it was amazing. I went back 3 times. And what was really beautiful about it is she had these giant screens that, you know, came down from the ceiling, and there were places for people to sit and experience in between the screens. And her video was so lush and so colorful. It really did seem like a daydream. And what I loved was how she used certain iconic images, you know, like the apple, you know, that could represent, you know, the tree of knowledge. And also she had beautiful images of the female body, and the female was the focus. And I wanted to understand, was, you know, this a feminist statement with her, or, you know, what was, you know, the focus on the woman? And what was interesting is when I read about her, and this was so, you know, so obvious, is that she wanted the woman in her pieces to represent all humanity. And what I love about it is, you know, growing up in still, you know, a society where when we think of a person, we often think of, you know, the male symbol. And the fact that she would take the female form as a point of departure to represent all humanity, I thought was really beautiful. And it really made me question, you know, the role of my gender in my work. Because for a long time, I've tried to almost be sort of gender neutral, and realize, you know, that you really can't, because from, you know, our earliest experience, you know, we're socialized with expectations, you know, to be a certain way. And so Pippilotti Reese, and then 2 summers ago, I discovered Joan Jonas. When I was in Europe at the Tate Modern in London, she had a solo show, And actually, I had never heard of her at that time. My wonderful cousin-in-law, Betsy Rosen, met us in New York, not in New York, I'm sorry, New York. She did meet us in New York too, but also London. And I saw her work, and it was like the same reaction I had to Mark Bradford. It was like I was seeing the familiar. She was using a lot of similar metaphors as I was. She was interested in masks. She was interested in, light on different elements. She created stage sets. Her videos didn't occur just on a screen. They were in a space. So it was kind of like seeing her work was work that I had sort of almost imagined, but not quite visualizing. And so that she was a big influence. And actually, Laurie Anderson, she recently started doing virtual reality work. I'd been an admirer of her work for a long time. I loved her storytelling ability. But what I found really interesting is when I started moving into VR, she had a very organic take on what VR could be. And it's interesting is even though I use the computer as part of my work, I'm always more drawn to the tangible, the tactile, the, pieces of the real world, things that people can imagine touching, the illusion of surfaces. And what I loved about Laurie Anderson's VR work is she really did create a world that was not cold and mechanical, but that felt, human. And so she was actually very inspiring to me as well.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've done some 360 work as well and explored that technology, and that's what I'm very much drawn to too. Is like, I could create these spaces within an animation and make them work in a 360 virtual reality, augmented reality environment. But what I'm mostly drawn to is like, how can I take real world surfaces and experiment with those through this medium? And so that's something that I thoroughly enjoy about your work, is that you find a way to sometimes either just focus on real world spaces or real world surfaces and implement them, or combine them then with some digitally created media that then layers with it in this space. And a plus is that a lot of your work can go between the barriers of the kind of three-dimensional virtual reality space, but then also can just be enjoyed as a 2D image. And I think that is because of those real world surfaces. Those, like the image you're watching right now, I know that the thing behind you, we can see that can be watched in wearing a virtual reality helmet, or we can see it as it is right here. And both of them have a similar conversation, but also a different conversation. Like there's a sharedness to the way that we interact with them, but then also you get a different experience. So I mean, that's just a really cool thing. So I mean, really, besides the artist, like what really made you think like, okay, virtual reality, 360 kind of stuff, what really drew you to that world?
Well, it's funny because, I think in life, when you look back, all the dots, connect and make a clear pattern. But, at the time when you're living life, you're living it forward and you don't see it. And actually how I got into cinematic VR, that's actually an interesting but cumbersome term, cinematic VR. It's based on work that's taken with a camera from the real world and then interpreted, versus very often VR is more about art that's created from scratch, from the computer. But anyway, how I discovered it was actually completely by accident, as some of the most wonderful things in my life have happened is by accident. I went to a conference at COSI on Immersa because I was in my first semester, actually just finished my first semester at CCAD. And I was envisioning a really huge venue for my moving image work. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be performance or whatever, but I had this fantasy that it could be at COSI, so that you'd have all these people and you'd have this shared immersive experience where you could really bring the sense of many people together sharing an immersive experience. And so I went to this conference. It was from this organization called Immersa, which is all about full dome video, a lot of planetariums and some artists, different science centers all over the world went to this conference. And I got in at a discount because I volunteered to take video of people socializing. And it absolutely blew me away, the artwork that I saw. And one particular agency really attracted my attention. They actually did a narrative in 360, and how they controlled the vision was really interesting. They would have like a scene, and then you'd have another scene here, but there was a lot of space. So it really felt like you were part of a group that was all remembering the same thing together. It was very, very profound. And afterwards, I went and I talked to the two creatives who had created this experience. And what they had talked about in one of their artist talk was creating a golden master. And they used a 360 camera and they shot, the footage. And then from the 360 master, they could create lots of different embodiments. They could create, a experience that you'd watch in a virtual reality headset. They could create a full dome experience, immersive, or they could, create a standard, video. And I love that idea. And so from there, I instantly went and bought a 360 camera. Just to see, because actually I intended on doing video for Full Dome. And in that process, I actually fell in love with the experience of putting on a VR, experiencing in a VR headset. Because what happens is when you put on a VR headset, you lose the sense of your own body completely. And what you are is when you put on that headset, it's as if you're literally in the mind of somebody else and seeing differently. And that has been my dream ever since I first started doing art. Could I create a world that was so believable that people could step in it and literally feel like they were looking through someone else's eyes? And it was at that point, I decided I would focus on the VR experience in the headset. And it was really interesting learning how to do it and what I wanted to say and about, camera position and movement. Because the thing that's interesting about 360 video is it has no frame. The person that's watching the experiences, they can't see everything at once. They have to choose their own view all the time. So what happens is it makes the experience uniquely the viewers. And even if they see it twice and look in different places, it's different. So you have to have, a different attitude about creating these spaces that gives people room to look around in. And also how camera movement works, camera position. One of my favorite, fairy tale, or I don't know, fairy tales, but children's literature was Alice in Wonderland. And what I loved about it was her dramatic scale change. And one of the things that I really love doing with the 360 camera is with camera placement, literally making a viewer feel as if they're 6 inches tall. And then by a different camera placement, having them feel like they're 9 feet tall. So it really kind of brings up that whole idea that, every time we are in a different physical place, we have a different point of view, and that none of them is really the whole truth. They're just fragments of it, and that we create a different truth in our heads. And
that's that whole idea of like multiple perspectives, that none of them are really true, that you're seeing them. I mean, that's like the basis of the majority of my artwork is as well. Like the sacred geometric stuff that I do comes out of a lot of Asian stuff and a lot of early cultural, almost folk art, quill work, other kinds of stuff like that, and exploring those shapes that are created that are literally from the sky down, but then these repetitive things, as if you're seeing a space in multiple times, in multiple places, multiple angles, but layered in a way that then they create these geometric patterns that can be very beautiful. And so it creates this idea that like our own perspective is never the truth. It's the combination of everyone's perspective that even gets close to what anything we could define as true might be, right? It's like, if you could possibly put enough people in a space and get all of their perspectives together, could it be the truth, right? And 360 virtual reality is definitely a way to explore that more.
It's amazing, because what happens with 360 also is you are able to capture reality in such a unique way. Sometimes when I take the 360 camera in a crowd, and it's actually very small, and most people don't recognize it as a camera. So I get people acting very naturally, which is really interesting. But when I look back at the 360 video and I'm editing, there is so much going on that I miss. And this whole idea that you could capture this moment in this incredible way and then store it and be able to pull it apart later is pretty interesting. It is. And actually that's one of the things that led me to my thesis project, which is I created actually a 360 video installation where there would be 3 different, what I call VR poems that people would experience, so that you'd have this idea that you were looking through a different set of eyes for each of the 3. And there were connecting motifs in all of these, so that you, hopefully, if you did see all 3, you would have a sense of something that was much greater than any of the parts. And it was interesting about my thesis show in Intangible Windows is I was very excited about it, and then COVID hit. And at first, no one knew it was going to be quite as dramatic as it turned out to be. And one of my instructors, Mike Olnick, he started saying, people may not be willing to put on a VR headset in a public situation. And I thought he was, overreacting, whatever. And what happened was he was exactly right. And so I ended up, finishing my thesis work and documenting it. But then from here, because of COVID, really looking at how, going back to the creatives that I really admired that I met at Immersa, how I could look at these VR poems and think of them as the golden master, that I had this content, with these metaphors, and how could I, move it into different forms in different ways. And so I've looked at how I can create the images to be a full surround projection installation. So that's one of the modifications I've been creating. I've also been looking at taking the video and creating shorter 30-second animations that are augmented reality. And augmented reality is something that a show has just ended at the Terra Gallery, where I was invited to have several augmented reality pieces. And what was wonderful is that, everybody came to the gallery and with social distancing and everyone wore masks. But the thing that was really exciting is that everyone could use their own phones or iPads, so that they could use those to interact with the real world. And that way it didn't invade anybody's personal space, but they still got this idea of this magic, that there is an unseen reality that you can see. And so that's one of the things that, I've been doing. I've also been looking at doing more collaborations with poets and musicians. I just finished a piece that was just finished being shown at the last Columbus Moving Image Art Review screening, which I was excited about. And I'm actually creating a slightly political piece for a Get Out the Vote event that's going to have shorts in October. So that's kind of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. So that kind of takes me to, another question is, what kind of work have you been making, under this time, right? Because you're talking about how, putting on a face mask might be difficult. I mean, I guess there's a way you could get around it with the augmented reality, right? You could have a photo up on the wall still, and then you could make everyone know that with a sign that says, hey, you can use your own phone. Here's a QR code for the app. And you could have disposable, like the Google Cardboard headset that you could slide your phone into, and then you could go and like your phone might see the augmented reality piece, and then a 360 virtual reality piece would take effect in their goggles. I don't know. And then at least then it's their own phone, their own headset. We were talking about this before. There's ways to make sure that they're using their own devices. They can keep it clean themselves, and then they can keep the Google Cardboard because those are pretty cheap to come by. That's a gallery expense, of course, but what are you going to do? So I mean, so what you said, these poetry pieces, is there anything else that you've been exploring at this time?
Yes. Well, first of all, I have to say another thing that I was so excited about. My mentor from CCAD, Rue Wagner, she told me about this international art and technology film festival in Poland. And my thesis work, actually all 3 poems were accepted into my first international film festival. And, yay, I know, I was so excited. And it's going to be October 23rd and 25th. And Rue and I are both representing the United States, and it's really exciting. So in spite of, trying to make lemonade with COVID, I'm also looking at other venues for my 360 work. Because also people are at home, I think people are really craving being able to be somewhere else. And there is nothing like putting on a VR headset or using a Google Cardboard and having the sense that you're really somewhere else, especially when so many of us can't be anywhere else. And actually, that whole idea is leading to a new body of work that I'm creating. I either call it Not Here, all caps, or Somewhere Else, all lowercase. And the idea is to take individual people's footprints and to be able, through augmented reality, have you be able to look through your phone or iPad, and then each set of footprints would go to another place in another world. And I would use a unique individual's footprints for each of that, being the catalyst. I'm looking at the idea of actually doing it as a sculpture, using a child's building fort kit and making a big sphere where I'd have about 12 different panels where they could be two-sided, and you might have a different animation experience based on each side. And the message from that for me is, it's like, even though, we're all unique and separate, all of us have in common that we're held on this earth by gravity through our feet. And our feet, and it's interesting, I've been doing footprints of, different people, and the texture on people's feet is just as unique as a fingerprint. And it's absolutely beautiful. So that's a project I'm working on right now.
I mean, you to just stop you there for a second about the feet thing. I mean, so I had that solo show at Fresh Air Gallery, a few years ago, and had several of my print works from my stills, and I have a whole series of pathways, and all of those are of feet. And so I think the piece that you and David ended up having is it's an image. My feet are or in that. And I think it's 5-fingered like Vibram toe shoes. And so like, you're right. I mean, when I make these pieces of feet, like I choose the pants I wear, I choose the shoes I wear, the socks, knowing the terrain that I'm going to be on, because all of that makes, you're basically creating color composition and shape and form based on the clothing choices you make. And if, especially, you know, bare feet, there's a lot of differences in people's feet. Someone has big toes, small toes, long feet, skinny feet, wider feet. Like our feet are drastically different. We don't think about it because we have a one size fits all shoe thing just based on length. Right. So, but yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think about. There's several artists who have focused on that idea of like looking at the feet traveling through space. So it's definitely interesting.
Well, it's so funny because actually I've been, another thing we have in common, Matt, is I had been obsessed by trying to create video of feet from under, you know, from below. Oh, and so I've been looking for years for the right glass floor that I could video from underneath. And I was in New York with my husband, and we were seeing the oh my God, I'm totally blanking on this person's name. Anyway, it was an amazing exhibit. And we took a break and we went downstairs at the Brooklyn Museum of Art, and I looked up and there was this pathway that was frosted glass, and you could see people walking up and down. And because of the frosted glass, the feet were in real, the footprint was in strong relief, and then the rest of their body moved into blur. And I went, oh my gosh. And so I took it, you know, I didn't have my regular video camera with, I just had my iPhone. And so I kept on shooting video up and just holding as still as I could. And then I had my my husband, David Ryan, you know, hold, and then I went upstairs and I took off my shoes because what I really wanted is to capture some video of, you know, the yes, the bare feet of the individual versus the clothed or shoed feet. You know, that whole sort of alone in a crowd kind of feeling, which all of us really are on some level. And that footage has become a big part in one of actually my VJ performances. And I think that, you know, actually my husband's saying, the David Bowie show, yes, actually. So it's so funny because, like, if you let yourself be drawn to certain things and you don't exactly know why you're drawn to them, it doesn't even matter. And then again, you'll notice that, you know, that all these different influences will, you know, create this amazing pattern. And so actually, one of my jazz pieces that I did a performance collaboration at the Fuse Factory with a experimental jazz trio. And I used the feet in that, and it was really fun, so.
Yeah, I mean, the feet thing is crazy. We've been wanting to do that for a long time too, is find some kind of glass structure or make something that has enough rigidity to hold weight. I mean, we might be able to find a place that can do thick enough plexi that I could get Nikki to walk across. But you know, I'm at like 250. So finding a glass, some kind of glass wall or floor that I could just set up for like a little bit of space. I mean, you'd have to like shoot a bit, move it, shoot a bit, move it. And that would even be tough with somebody of my size. So I don't know. It's definitely something we've been interested for a long time. We actually on campus, everybody knows OSU campus and some other campuses, they always have like people throw stuff out, and somebody threw out a glass table, and we went and grabbed the glass and stuck it in our garage immediately. It eventually broke, but like before we could do anything with it, but like we really, I think we did shoot one thing through it, but it was like having a huge, like, you know, 2.5 foot by 5 foot just sheet of glass. Like, you know, it's hard to store. They're heavy. Glass is very heavy. People would be surprised. But man, you can do a lot of really fun stuff that we don't even think about. It's changing the perspective of the way that you look at things. I mean, that's some of the, like, everybody always talks about the fun shots and things like Breaking Bad, where they're like dumping stuff into a washing machine and the camera's there. Like, that's all done through glass, where it's basically like the camera is the floor. How often is the camera the floor?
Exactly. And it, like, I almost think of it, it's the Earth's view of people. And it's exactly the opposite. And actually, I bought a glass top coffee table to try to create collages and then shoot them underneath. One of the things that I have used a lot is a Xerox camera. Not a Xerox camera. I use the Xerox machine as a camera by putting objects, both three-dimensional objects and 2D images on top of the Xerox bed and then move them. So it creates that feeling of distortion that I almost think, you know, happens in your mind of when you see something sharp, but then there's distortion. And so I thought it would be really awesome to be able to do that, but to do it in video. So I bought this great glass top coffee table, and that's waiting for me. You know, there's so many things I'm interested in. So I'm looking forward to doing that too, to have things that defy gravity. One of the things that I've been doing to help give me that feeling of freedom from gravity is I've been shooting a lot of footage underwater. And my 360 camera has an underwater housing. And so I've been shooting, you know, people, objects, different things underwater to be able to try to capture that kind of dream-like thing. Again, I'm trying to take snippets of things that people really believe exist and then just augment it, you know, through digital painting. You know, again, have that whole feeling like, you know, this space is real, but nothing like I've ever seen in the real world. It's only seen through, you know, an inner world, but visualized externally. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fun of it, right? Is taking and creating a new world out of the world that exists in a way. I mean, we have several projects, like we've shot through fish tanks, where we've like taken fish tanks and filled them with water and put cameras in them, or shot into the tank while we're having stuff going through the water so that we get that freedom of weight that exists. Nikki currently has a piece that she's working on that incorporates like a glass house. So like that, just the idea of being able to suspend things in a weight or see through things in a way that you wouldn't be able to see through them otherwise, but still in a recognizable shape or form, right? It's a very fun thing to explore. So I mean, I think you covered a little bit of the fact that you have a few things coming up, but we're getting close to time here. And so like, you have the festival thing coming up in October. And then you just had a show come down. Do you have any other things that you've been submitting to that you think might be coming up on the horizons?
I'm focusing a little bit more on Europe right now. I've found that, especially for things like, you know, VJ performances and 360 video, that especially Germany, Poland, the Netherlands seems to be a really good environment. So there's a couple call for entries that I'm looking at for that. There is going to be this voter registration event with film shorts, and that's going to be at the Vanderelli Room. We don't have all the details narrowed down quite yet, but I'm actually really excited about that, especially because I think, you know, looking at the world differently through different worldviews, you know, I think our political climate, you know, being so divided about how we see the world, that there's a lot of creative opportunities and being able to challenge that. One of the ideas that I had was you know, with 3D glasses, how one lens is red and one is blue, but then together you see 3D. And I kind of feel like, you know, the same thing's happening now in our political climate, is that you can look through a lens, you know, of a red view or a blue view, and you don't see the whole. And I love that idea that, you know, to take that metaphor, the 3D glasses, that you could see wholly and really, you know, look at, you know, helping to overcome division, or at least accepting that another point of view is also valid, you know, versus, you know, rejecting it. So
let me give you a little bit more on that. That's I don't know if we talk about this. So after my concussion with my scooter accident, my right eye, actually the muscle spasmed and like moved my eye over and up. And so I was slightly, my eye was off, and I had to do 9 months of ocular therapy. Basically like lifting weights with my eyes to try to get them to come back and work together. And 3D was part of that. So I have a set of 3D glasses, and I have these 3D drawings that there's 2 of them, one in blue, one in red, and they're identical. And you start with them together, so it's just one image, right? And you wear the 3D glasses and you pull them apart. And as you pull them apart in one direction, to your brain, you have to use your eyes and your brain together to try to keep the image together, even though they're being torn apart. And what that does is it makes you cross your eyes. And then if you push them the other direction, it makes you uncross your eyes, which is the really hard thing to do, which is the thing I had to work on, was trying to make your eyes cross out, like uncross the other way. And man, it gives you headaches. So imagine like the metaphor of that, like the headaches that we all have because we're looking out on a world where we all have, it's the same world, but we're all seeing it from different,
like this,
yes, and it's being pulled apart,
like this image here,
so hard.
Right. And that's one of the things that I really loved about this whole idea of the installation, you know, being able to have an experience where you really are looking at the world through the different views, you know, to be able to create, you know, I hate to say, this sounds so, I don't know, idealistic, but, you know, I really do think that a lot of these technologies, especially now with COVID, I think a lot of people are really needing to embrace technology to create connection, you know, because we're so separated. And I just think that, you know, a lot of these technologies really have the opportunity to help overcome some of the limitations that people have had in, and really, you know, helping them realize that, you know, they do put together their own reality, and knowing that they put it together themselves, that they have the option of making different choices and being able to change the way they see the world, which, you know, gives them more choices and an opportunity to make improvements in their life and connect more with others. So.
Very well said. Very well said. I think that feels like a really good place to stop. It's like, you know, the technology is here. I think it's here to stay, and it's going to grow. I just heard today about IBM creating like a whole new platform of things for education that they're driving forward. I mean, our ability to connect through technology is not going anywhere. It's going to develop more and more, and we've been pushed to the forefront of it with this current time. And so if we can find ways to use it for positivity as opposed to negativity, then that's the crux at this point. Can we not focus so much on negative all the time? What are the problems in the world? What are the problems in the world 100% of the time? The problems are paramount. We have problems. They're important. We have to deal with them. But let's find a place for positivity. Where are the good stories? Where are the people who are doing good things for good people in the communities? Where are people who are using technology to help in places where help is desperately needed, right? Let's make a space for those.
Well, I totally agree. And, it's funny. One of the things that, I have a complicated given name, Christine Guillot Ryan. And after a venue owner was trying to introduce me and she couldn't pronounce my maiden name, which is Guillot, I finally just yelled from the back, just CG Ryan. And, simplify. And what I really want CG to stand for and CG Ryan is create good.
That's great. It's been great talking to you, CG. Like, it's been a while since we've been able to see each other, but you're a member of Ohio Art League, and we work with Ohio Art League. We're on the board there, so we've been able to see each other a few times virtually. Mm-hmm. For everybody watching, Ohio Art League is slated to try to participate in Art Tells a Story coming up here soon. Well, information will come out about that. So I will not be hosting those. So I just want to thank you for coming out, and thank you for putting together your visuals in the background so we have something lovely to look at. Selfless promotion. Everybody's been watching. This is my installation down at the Hilton Canopy down on Nationwide Boulevard. People could go there. They are open certain hours. If you go in the back into the entryway under the drive-through, you can go in and see it. So, so are you planning to submit to the next CMAR? Do you have something ready?
Absolutely. And yes, I do. And I can hardly wait to share it with you. Awesome. And I just want to also thank you and Nikki so much for the Columbus Moving Image Art Review. I think it is so important to the Columbus community, the fact that it's so inclusive and it offers, a forum and an audience and a venue. And it also is one of the things that helps keep me creating, knowing that, I want to have something new at least every 3 months. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome. And we'll see what the future of this event is going to look like because our feature film that we've been working on for a while, Those Who Spring of Me, it's done. Nikki has finished editing it. We did our first test screening for the screenwriter last week. We're going to do another test screening with a few new edits this Friday. And to do that, we had to kind of bite the bullet and figure out what to do. And so we bought an inflatable 20-foot screen.
Oh my gosh.
And an FM transponder so that now we can all just sit in our cars and watch the films from our cars like a drive-in and listen to the audio through our stereos. So we're probably going to do the next CMAR online. We'll see what happens over the winter months, but fingers crossed, maybe we'll find a space where we can do a drive-in style Columbus Moving Image Art Review. That would be super sweet.
I love that idea. I can hardly wait.
Yeah. So excited. So thank you very much again. I just want to let everybody know this is every Thursday at 4:30. Art Tells a Story, Let It Tell Yours. We're getting out there, man. Nikki has put together over 30 episodes at this point. You can find the show here on Facebook, on Twitter. You can now listen to it as a podcast. It's out on Anchor. It's been picked up. You can listen to it on Spotify. I believe if you even ask your Alexa for Art Tells a Story, it'll find it for you. So you can find it out there. If you're part of an arts organization that has not been featured yet, you can go back and look. Contact your arts organizations. Tell them about the show and let them know to reach out to us. You can find us pretty easy, Nicolettecinemagraphics, Reese Brothers Productions, and let them know you might be interested. We're going to I think they're trying to keep this going for as long as they can. We may end up taking a break and doing another season or something like that. We don't know yet what the future of the show is going to look like. I just have insider information because I'm the partner of the production team. So, keep sharing it out. The more this can grow, the more artists in Columbus we can try to celebrate, the more organizations we can try to celebrate and kind of give them a voice and a place to be heard at this time. Next week, I'm looking forward to this. I hope it all pans out. I'm going to be talking to two students, former students, alumni, CCAD and Ohio State, that are roommates that they both have created separate work. They've created work together. It's going to be very interesting. Janelle Mormon and Shay Garnes. So it all works out. There's a scheduling. We're hoping everything works out. We've got both, and we get both of them on the show. So that's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to that conversation. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I think the music's going to play us out. So thanks very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Reese Brothers.